I'm very happy that you play the correct articulations and notes.
So this guy.
Yeah, it's good because I'm constantly here that things that are not correct, but then this is right. And what I mean by that is that there's no manuscript of this entire piece, but there is a manuscript of an early version, the sort of beginning sketch of about half of the first movement. And there we have the clarinet part, and Mozart writes certain phrasings, and he writes also this natural, where you have that. He writes that. Okay. And I still go to classes, I go and I hear people playing. Like that. But that is wrong, because we see it in the manuscript. And it's wrong not only because Mozart wrote the natural, but because of what it is. And this is what I want to talk to you a little bit about. Because there is that, and there's also this part. And then Mozart writes the slur. You see, and this is this is the well, Rykov is a little bit better than Barenrein in this way, because at least it's written in the recapitulation that way as well. But I want to explain the reason why Mozart felt that he had to write in that way. So it's not simply, again, this is the composer doesn't just wake up in the morning and think, oh, I'm going to put a slur. And then the next day, no, I'm not going to put a slur. There's an important reason for that. Okay. So we start with this one here. And if we see this, what Mozart is doing, he goes into minor. He goes to 6, F sharp minor. This is very important in general in this piece. We have this. Always going into F sharp minor. But if we're going into with what has to be, you will never do. That's simply a mistake. So isn't it terrible that for 200 years, clarinet players were playing it with a mistake? Very bad. So at least you're not playing the mistake. That's good. Very good. So both times, because you hear how he goes into minor. That way. Okay. Now let's go to the one before, where we have this. This is a little more complicated. But why did Mozart feel he wanted to put the slur there? And of course, that was traditionally has been taken off, so that it was always that way. But we go to the time when Mozart wrote this, so 1789 to 1790, and he was living in Vienna, and his reputation was a little bit of kind of wild. In fact, there's a famous composer at that time whose name was Dittersdorf, who you would only know this name if you played the bass, because he wrote a concerto for bass, which is played now. You see, we have a clarinet concerto by Mozart, not Dittersdorf. But Dittersdorf wrote that we all know that Mozart is the greatest composer, but his music is so complicated that we can't follow it from the beginning to the end. Isn't that interesting? That he thought it was so modern at that time that it was very hard to understand what he was doing. And one of the things that he did, and he started to make what I call dramatic breaks. So the music goes along, and then all of a sudden it changes immediately this way. And that's what is happening here. You see, it starts off very and then he actually brings in the second violin and the viola in whole note together. Different characters come in. You say, you understand what is happening here. See, and that's why it's not a sequence. But all of a sudden. And then it goes on to something else. You see, so the expression changes in the music. If, for instance, he were writing earlier in his life, probably it would be something like this. Continuous this way, but in this later music, all of a sudden he breaks. It goes somewhere else. Okay? So that's why in this section here is if you know this, then you end up playing not simply with the slur, but important to understand always why, and not simply do because it's written, although it's a good idea to start from what the composer actually writes. That's right. Okay, now we go back and have you play again, because you play very nicely, but the rhythm should be a little more steady. You know, everything has this bounce behind it. So we have this way. It's we have a so go ahead. Yeah, of course. Yeah. Okay, now let's look at just the way you start. You start a little bit like this, and to me, I think this creates a physical problem. Because you can start like this. You see, and what happens when you do that, this is very, very common, and is that you close your mouth. And the reed